Okay, guys, let's go ahead and talk about it. So, spanning tree. Okay, so I have this here. Okay, and before we do this, I want to go ahead and go through a quick little overview. I have some of the answers here for you, but I'm gonna play the what if game. Okay, so um, before we do that, let's establish some rules. Okay, so as you guys can see here, we have three switches in this topology. The MAC address of each respective switch is near it. So this MAC address is this switch, this MAC address is for this switch, this MAC address is for this switch. Okay, and we also went ahead and we labeled some what would be the port roles. Okay, if I were to unplug this, okay, let me go ahead and unplug this really quick. So we delete those lines and we're going to re-plug them back again. Okay, this right here, okay, I want to go ahead and get two birds with one stone. Okay, so when you plug in switches, okay, um, it's going to go through its states. Okay, and this is how it's going to determine which the states will determine which roles it has, and it's going to determine which has the superior BPDUs. Okay, which is going to be our root switch. Okay, and the way the root switch is determined, it's by the lowest ID bridge. I haven't configured any of the lowest ID bridges on any of the switches. You can go ahead and configure that manually to make whichever switch you want to be your root switch. Okay, and as you can see, when I first went ahead and I connected all of these, um, they were all basically orange. Okay, and we'll do it again because I think this is extremely important to highlight. Okay, so it's going through its process, and as you can see, I don't want to connect the console. Uh, okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's see here. As you see here, let's go ahead and delete this. Yeah, don't connect the console, guys. You want to connect fast Ethernet. There we go. That's better. Okay, so as you guys can see this, okay, this right here is a perfect example, okay, of the switch going through its port states: disabled, blocking, listening, learning, forwarding, so on and so forth. Okay, the root bridge, the root switch, there's two ways to determine that. The lowest ID bridge, by default, they're all the same. Okay. By default, they're all the same. If they're all the same, it's going to go to our second rule, which is the lowest MAC address. Okay. So the switch with the lowest MAC address is going to go ahead and be our root switch. Okay. So I gave you guys the example of the states. When you barely plug something in, notice how all the lines were orange. They were trying to go ahead. They were blinking. They were coming up. They were going through the states. Okay. The root bridge, or the way I like to think about it, is the superior BPDUs. Okay. It's based upon first the lowest ID bridge. If that's a match, then it goes to the lowest MAC address. So just looking at this here has a superior BPDU to all of these because it has the lowest MAC address. Mind you, our bridge ID on this and this potential switch in the future, foreshadowing here, is going to go ahead and have the same bridge ID. Okay, so that means that all of this is based upon its lowest MAC address. This switch here has the lowest MAC address. Therefore, this is going to be our root switch. Okay, superior PPDUs. Compare this switch to this switch. Which of these switches has the superior BPDUs? This switch. Okay. This switch has the superior BPDUs because it technically has a lower MAC address. A and the computer realm is lower than F. Okay. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's go ahead and see here. The next thing is I have three rules, guys. When it comes to spanning tree, these three rules have honestly helped me tremendously. Okay, three easy rules when it comes to determining the port rule. Rule number 1, when it comes to determining which root port or root rule, mind you, the root is forwarding towards the root bridge. Okay, the rule is only one per switch except the root switch. Okay, that means that there's only one per switch except the root switch. So if there's three switches and one of them is the root switch, you can expect, okay, you can expect that on this switch, one of these is going to go ahead and be, one of these is going to go ahead and be the root roll. Okay, either this one or this one. And if this switch is not the root switch, one of these is going to be the root. Okay, the root rule. Okay, that's my first rule. My second rule, okay, designated port, one per line. Does this have a line? Yes. One of these is going to be the designated port. Is this a line? Yes. One of these is going to be the designated port. Is this a line? Yes. One of these is going to be a designated port. Mind you, I'm not saying, hey, my definition of a line is something that is straight or so on and so forth. It's basically saying if there's a connection. Okay, so for every connection between each interface, one of those, okay, is going to be the designated port role. Okay, the next one is easy. Okay, blocking. Ports on a root bridge are never blocked. So if we know this is our root bridge, okay, if we know this is our root bridge, none of these ports here are going to be blocked. Never blocked. So you can tell this is not a root switch because this port here is blocked. Okay. So those are the three rules. Mind you, blocking is generally used for what would be older versions of spanning tree. Blocking when it comes to multiple spanning tree and RPVST, rapid per VLAN spanning tree. Okay, that is basically known as an alternative or also as a backup. Okay, so blocking, you can think of it as alternative or backup. Okay, but nonetheless, they basically do the same thing, but just the jargon of it, depending on which version of spanning tree you're using, if you see alternative, don't be surprised. And on this situation, you can actually go ahead and see that it does say alternative. Oh, great. Now it's translating. That's going to take a couple seconds. But nonetheless, you guys can see uh, blocking. Okay. It's just the rule is still the same. It's just the name. It's going to say alternative instead of blocking. It's still translating here on the DNS. I typed in a little typo here. Okay. But here we go. I want to go ahead and play a game with you guys, the what if game. So we have this switch. Okay, we have this switch. And this switch we know has a superior BPDU because this MAC address is lower than this MAC address. And if this MAC address and this switch is the root switch, and you introduce a new switch into this topology with a superior BPDU, that means this is going to now be our root switch. And let's say we connect the line here and here. Okay. I want you to go ahead and think about how this would change. What would make a root port? What would how would this go ahead and change, guys? Okay, take a minute, take a second. Let's go back to here. Show spanning tree. Show span. Show. Okay, so let's go ahead here. Okay, so you guys can see here the role. It doesn't say blocking. Status blocking, but the role is also known as alternative, which is it is blocking. So just keep that in mind. Um, when it comes to just the jargon, but these rules still apply, and these rules are what's going to go ahead and help us. Okay, so take a second. If we introduce this switch that has superior BPDUs, how will this affect our topology? Okay, how would this affect our topology? Okay, um, whenever you guys are, let's see here. Well, I guess you guys can pause the video, right? And then go ahead and figure it out. Okay, but I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna prepare over here and pause the video, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna figure this out together. Okay. Okay. Hopefully you guys are back, and this is what we're gonna do. Okay. So if this here Okay, if this here is my root switch, I'm gonna go back to my rules. Rule number one, okay? Only one root port, only one per switch except the root switch. So I know there's not gonna be any root switches or any port roles here, any root roles here. Okay, designated, there has to be one per line. Okay, let me keep that in mind. Blocking ports on a root bridge are never blocked. Okay, so if there's no root ports and there's no blocking ports, okay, by these rules, because this is going to be our root switch, then by default, this is going to be designated and this is going to be designated. Okay, now if I've switched over to this, let me go ahead and let's figure this out here. Okay, so this switch here, what would be the lowest cost, right? Because the root port is forwarding to the root switch. So I already know that the lowest cost to this switch would be a straight line to it. So I can determine that this is going to go ahead and be my root role, my root port. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. So now what about this line? How would this line change? Will this line be blocking, or would it go ahead be a designated port? How would that change? Interesting. Let me go ahead and I'll tell you this. I know this has the second superior BPDUs. Okay, so this has the second superior BPDUs. So I would imagine that this would be a designated port here. This would be a designated port here. Okay, just as such, because we already have our root port, so on and so forth. Some of these might be blocking. Now let's go to switch 6. Switch 6, I'm going to tell you, a direct line to the root switch. I can imagine that this would want to be the root port. Okay, so this is where things go ahead and get tricky. We have a designated port. Okay, we have designated port here, and we haven't answered this here. So this, okay, this here, what would this be? Would this be a designated port or a blocking port? Okay, designated port or a blocking port. So we have this here. That's our root. Designated. Okay. Let's go back to our rules here for just a second. We have our root port here. We have our root port here. This one here, which would be faster? Okay. Would it be faster to go this way? Okay. Or would it be faster to go this way? Uh, Technically, the speed for that would be the same. So, which would have the superior BPDUs? Okay, either this way or this way. Okay, and technically, this would stay the same. I would imagine this would stay the same. If this is a designated port, I'm thinking, guys, this is going to be a blocking port. So let's go ahead and let's type in blocking here. And why would this be a blocking port? Why would this be a blocking port? The reason being why is because this, okay, this has superior BPDUs compared to this. Okay, so that's the way to think about it. Superior BPDUs. Okay, lowest bridge ID, lowest MAC address, and then you also have to think about the speed. So let's actually connect this and let's see how this would actually go ahead and work. So actually on this, let me type this into here, and on this, let me type this into here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see how this goes ahead and plays out. And look at that, guys. Looks like this became our blocking port. Okay, this became our blocking, or this really didn't switch. But it looks like we went ahead and we got it right. Okay, this did end up becoming our blocking port. We went ahead and rearranged our root ports and so on and so forth. Okay, so always think about it as superior BPDUs. Okay, lowest bridge ID, lowest MAC address, and then always think about it with regards to faster speeds. Okay, with that being said, guys, I wish you guys the best of luck and a wonderful day.